Hey, it is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2026. Welcome to Direct Line Wednesday. Our hosts today are Mark Uncover and filling in for on assignment researching cruise ships is Susan McConkey filling in for Jackie Saxton. Our guest today is going to be the next county executive of Anne Arundel County, Dave Crawford. Take it away, guys.
Well, thank you, and it's great to have Susan on. But Dwight, we probably shouldn't give Susan the impression that going on cruises comes with the job, or who knows what'll happen. Dave,
right? I was going to ask if I could come back. Okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a real perk of the job. So, as running for county executive, I would love to hear a lot about your plans for the county and how you would do things differently. But why don't we kind of lead off? Tell us a little bit about your background and how did you get to this point in public life?
Well, Mark and Susan, first off, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. My background, I have been basically in the food service business for literally 44 years now. I started with Cisco Food Service back in 82 in their infancy and was in basically the Houston area. Ended up going into management there. From there, I got sent to Nacogdoches to be a DSM up there and also run a satellite office. You know, Nacogdoches is kind of special. If you ever watch a John Wayne movie, he always asks the guy before he gets into a tussle with him, "Are you from Nacogdoches?" And spent 10 years there. And in that time frame, got transferred to the Longview warehouse. From Longview, they came to me and said, "Hey, you either go to San Diego or Baltimore." And they needed positions there. I came to Baltimore in 2012. In the food service business, stuck with Cisco till 2017. Retired, walked away. Performance Food Service was up and coming. Asked me to come back to work for them. I came back to work for them. I run a district now that's 90 plus million a year. That's basically in the Maryland, DC, and a little bit of Virginia market, dealing with nothing but strictly small businesses and hearing all their issues and seeing what they have to go through. So got a quite understanding of what happens there. And in all that time frame, I started volunteering down in Houston. Believe it or not, as big as Houston is, there's only 3 career fire departments: the city of Houston, Ellington Air Force Base, and a little town called Westview inside of Houston. So you have basically 42 volunteer fire companies protect 6.6 million people. And I felt like, I always wanted to give back to the community. I was in great shape, healthy, all that good stuff. And saw a sign one day and said, "Hey, we need people." Jumped in, both feet, enjoyed it. It went from being that thrill running, burning buildings and helping people to understanding how much you really help people. I've just stuck with it through the years and through the different things. When they originally formed Texas Task Force 1, a USAR, I got picked to be on that in 1997. Stayed on that for 5 years, 2002. And basically stayed in that. When I came up here, I told my wife I was a chief down in Texas, and I said I would just ride backwards and just do what I can to help my community. Well, that lasted a couple years, and the guys realized my experience and my certifications and what have you. And next thing you know, I ended up as chief of Earleigh Heights. And then from Earleigh Heights, I became what they call the volunteer XO for the county. So I'm basically the volunteer chief and the liaison and the command staff over the volunteer companies, which are at this point 15 in the county. And I've just continued to do that because I think that, we all have something to give. We all should give. And the volunteer fire service, it's a passion, but volunteering is also a passion. It was formed in 1736. So you think about it, it's the oldest volunteering organization there is in America today. And we're just strong. And I think that's great things. And from there, I just started, I've always got grants. I've got way over $10 million, actually more than that, in AFG grants for my companies, because I always want to make us better. And when somebody calls 911, I want to make sure they get the best person responding with the best equipment. And just have got to know folks in this county and the county council and state delegates and state members because of looking for money and that. And folks just started asking me, and, I thought, now's the time. I know that the current county executive can't run again. He's term limited. And I felt like they had a lot to offer. I see the backside of the spending in this county. I'm kind of lucky at that, at what I do and how I get involved. So I see that. And I also see what the citizens want. And I also live here and struggle with my neighbors in the community. So it was time to step up and say, you know what? I see the good, I see the bad, and there's still a lot of good to be had, but we've got to get it going that direction. I went down to Annapolis and signed up.
So tell me, what made you decide to run for county executive?
I felt, we needed somebody on that was fiscally responsible, understood business, understood budgets, understood what this community needs, and felt that I was that person because that's what I do for a living. It's to me, it's all about a business. I'm a firm believer that the county is a business and we have customers, just like what I do today. And our customers are the community and the citizens, and they deserve service, and customer service is huge. And I think today's political climate, too many times it's about us, not about them, and the them being is our customers, which is our community members. And it's time that we get back understanding that they're paying our bills, their taxes fund everything we do. And yes, we have to have taxes because we're a service and it pays for the service, but they also deserve to be treated like customers, not just like, hey, it's your money. We do what we want. We really don't care what you have to say. And I have a strong opinion, and we got to treat folks and understand how important it is with their funds that they're giving us out of their, weekly paycheck and also out of their property. And it has to be spent wisely, smartly, and with the right, quote unquote, family budget mindset, because we have to do that in our homes. And there's no reason that the government shouldn't do it the same way. So I stepped in and stepped up.
What would be
Susan?
your top fiscal priorities for the county?
Top fiscal priority is run a smart budget, okay? Cut waste, pay attention to what we're doing, look for better ways to what we're doing. I mean, I can tell you ways on the fire side. I can tell you how we can look at equipment. We've got to look at our personnel. The most important thing we have is our people, and we've just got to be smart and run it with a budget, and understand we have to deliver services that are for every single person in this county. And that's a simple fiscal responsibility, is deliver the service on time with what we basically pledge, and at budget or under budget, because tax dollars matter. And right now, the tax and the taxing on payroll and the taxing on property taxes just continues to increase. But then again, the economy does too. And you can only, squeeze, quote unquote, so much out of a turnip, right? And we've got to do the right thing. So fiscal responsibility is a lot of things mixed together, but it's making all those pieces come together to complete that puzzle and deliver what we say we're going to do.
So you mentioned the fact that Stuart Pittman, who has been the county executive, is term limited. So he's come, as I recall, it was 8 years at the end of his term. How would you assess his performance as county executive?
I would say it's a C right now. I mean, he's done some good things. He's done some horrible things. I think he's forgot about the everyday hardworking person in this county. And he's only worried about certain special interests and certain interests that kind of appeal to him. He came from a nice background, I guess, a wealthy background. And, most of the citizens in this county are just hardworking, 9 to 5, 8 to 5ers, some of them 6 to 6ers. And when you don't understand what they toil with and what they do, and they have 2 income families and how they're trying to make things work, because you don't have that background, you tend to forget about those people, and they tend just to become just a number on the board versus a person that, you're there to do the right thing with their funding, because on a day-to-day basis, you don't have to face that. So that's why I say C, because I think he's taking care of what he thinks is sometimes, to me, is state and federal issues and not local issues. And that's one thing about me. Anne Arundel, for lack of a cliche, is my sandbox, right? I'm worried about the people in that sandbox. There's going to be the state, there's going to be the federal, there's going to be things we have to deal with. I get it, but we can't get off track and can't get right now spun up in state and federal issues when my job would be taking care of county, period.
Well, one of the things that us, 9 to 5ers or 6 to 6ers have to deal with is the traffic. is that just, do we blame the state? Is that a state issue that we blame the Maryland Department of Transportation? Or is there something that the county can do to help all the congestion?
I think there's enough blame to go around, but it's, we need to look at fixing things and realize where we are. And I can give you a quick synopsis. And if everybody would think about this, we have 97 and 50, right? 97 is the shortest interstate in the United States, right? But if you get on 50 and you're trying to come north or south, people don't realize there's about a 9 to 10 mile stretch where you can't get off. Okay. So if there's an accident or something happens, it's just nothing but a bottleneck. It wasn't planned right. So that is causes every day as we have more and more people, working in Annapolis, more and more people live across the bridge and come across here, is they've realized that they have to take alternate routes because if something happens, they have a problem. So what has happened is now we're dumping people on the Ritchie Highway. We're dumping people on the Crane Highway because they can cut through neighborhoods, take alternate roads and alternate streets. And we've created basically a traffic jam on arteries that were never designed for that. So for that to happen, that's a more than just a state, more than a local, it's a federal, because there is federal highway funds. We have to be smart. We have to partner with the state to find those federal highway funds. And we have to come up with development and look at finding ways to basically alleviate some of that bottleneck on 97, and also look at how we can, I hate to say it, but expand 2 and 3 to handle some of the traffic, because it's never going to go away. It's only going to get worse. So we've got to plan ahead. And if you look at kind of how things been, give or take, in the last 10 years, I went back and looked, most of the roads in this county have been built by developers for subdivisions. We really haven't put, quote unquote, county roads in, or just regular streets in. And we've got to look at that. The next part we've also got coming that I have to get involved in as county executive is that Bay Bridge expansion, when they want to put 2 more lanes. I mean, that's huge, because that's going to affect the property owners, traffic, the county 100%, 110%. And if we're not on top of that, we're not ahead of that, and we're not speaking out loud, what's going to happen is we're just going to get kind of theoretically pushed down to us, and we're just going to have to shrug our shoulders and accept it. And we shouldn't be doing that. We should be coming up in conjunction with the state and the federal government, highway administration, for a plan that works for all, and getting involved, saying going and talking to the right people, and saying what needs to be said for the citizens. We have got to do that. We have got to make sure we're staying ahead of the curve. And right now we're behind the curve in basically transportation. And way back when, right, 1776, people forget that the government was founded for 2 reasons, right? Public safety and public infrastructure. Okay. And right now, this county is struggling both ways, public safety and public infrastructure. And roadways and the new Bay Bridge and all that is all part of what the government and the county should be doing for our citizens and community.
Well, let me follow up on the theme that you just touched on, which is public safety. What, as county executive, would you advocate to, or what would you advocate as a change in policy for public safety?
Well, the first policy would be just an employment policy. When I say that employment, I'm not sure the right term, but you have right now an individual that's in charge of the county, and he doesn't support our law enforcement folks. He doesn't go out and say they do the right thing. All right. So I don't care who you work for. If you work for an agency where the boss didn't support you, you kind of got treated somewhat okay by people around you, and really didn't have the support, you wouldn't work for that corporation no matter what it is. Well, we have the same issue with our police officers. These, every man and woman on our police force are great people, because I interact with them all the time. They care what they do. They care about their job. They care about serving and policing in the community. But when the guy in charge doesn't do that, you know what? That hurts. Point blank hurts. So the first thing I would do is to turn that battleship around, would tell everybody every day how important our police officers are, and start supporting them. Then when you start supporting them and giving that, there's other police officers from other jurisdictions that would love to come here and work with the support and the background help they deserve. And then, of course, we have to look at everything. All comes down to salaries, right? Dollars and cents, let's be honest. And we have to look at finding ways to get them more money. we have to increase. We're right now, give or take, short about 325 or so police officers to a full force per what the standards say. I understand, and I know the police department understands that we couldn't hire 325 people right off the bat because there's no way we could find millions of those dollars, right? It'd have to come from somewhere. But we can set an aggressive plan in place to increase the number every year as we go forward. What we also forget is we have reserve officers that give their own free time to do things. And a lot of times we don't do and help and encourage people to do that because us reserve officers can take the load off our regular officers and let them do the policing they needed to do, plus the assisted policing of the reserve officers. And we can do a lot. The other part of that with that is we have so many partners that you have the sheriff's department, we have other law enforcement agents in the state that are always looking to partner with local, basically police force to do things and get their people trained. So I would do everything we can to step into that ring and say, look, hey, we're a great training ground. Come work with our officers. I don't care. As long as you are a certified law enforcement officer, I'm happy to have you because that's how the only way we're going to be able to step up and do a great job reducing crime. On the fire side, they say they're short 350 firefighters, right? Once again, we couldn't hire 350 firefighters because we would literally be broke. But we can look at a graduated increase every year because I do understand that a little bit more because of retirements and all that, just like the police department. So we're going to set figures and we're going to add people every year. We also have a cadre of 400 to 500 volunteer firefighters, once again, like the reserve officers, that we can incorporate and help make those engines and apparatus safer. The ideal idea is, once again, to hire more, correct. But we don't want to lose the folks we have because they have the same certifications. So we have some of the mechanisms in place. We have some of the folks in place, but we need to go out and get more. And on the far side, what's nice is the federal government has what they call a SAFER grant. And that's a grant, once again, that, the government funds for a couple, 3 years, and then it becomes our problem. Well, if we can plan and work ahead and we can budget ahead, I'm all about putting in for a SAFER grant. And that gives us money to hire 70 to 80 firefighters. And we get closer to that number every year if we do the right thing. So, and the other part folks don't understand, and I really hope folks start to think about this, is as this county increases in population, we get more 911 calls, period, police and fire response. And as this county grows, that's always going to continue to raise it probably between a 5 and 15% rate of calls for service. So we have to be looking at what we're doing and trying to stay ahead of the curve than, just trying to maintain. And maintain doesn't get it done because eventually you end up on the negative side of that curve. So I'm all about public safety. I'm all about putting a plan together. The police chief and fire chief that I bring on board will understand that. We will have a plan. We will have a plan to increase staffing, and we will have a plan to deliver service to every single person that feels like they need the service in this county.
You touched on development, which of course is something that shapes the county for the future. You talked about being prepared with the roads and what have you. So this is obviously one of the issues that really differentiates county and other local officials. So what is your philosophy towards development?
We have a lot of areas in this county right now that we have vacant buildings, we have dilapidated buildings, we have almost empty malls, i.e. Marley Station Mall. Annapolis Mall is probably about 50% filled. All those facilities, okay, are opportunities. They're not things that need to be overlooked or pretend we can't do something with. The buildings are already there. The infrastructure is there. The parking lots are huge, right? We can do everything from getting with developers to banks and helping, everybody talks about affordable housing, right? Well, if we went back and looked at some of these vacant structures and dilapidated buildings, and we got developers and bankers to work with us, and there's HUD out there, there's SBA, there's things like that. We can go look for money, and we can actually come up with great housing by just redeveloping what we have, especially up in the northern part of the county. And we can offer basically what I would consider, if we do the right thing and reduce crime and all that, to the teachers, the firefighters, and the police officers at affordable housing with a home that's an affordable rate and an affordable payment. And we not only do we talk about then get to affordable housing, then we bring our public safety folks and our teachers who, basically they all struggle every day, to where they can have a nice home for their families and live in this county. And then the second part is when you look at structures like Marley Station Mall, Annapolis Mall, those are great. I mean, you could turn those into basically workstation type areas. There's plenty of those. If you go to DC, they've turned like their old produce market into a huge remote workstation with restaurants and what have you. And if that doesn't work, we have the community college. We could even look at it taking, the county taking Marley Station Mall and turning that into a large county service facility center, because the infrastructure's there, the building's there, there's plenty of room there, there's plenty of parking there. It's just being smart. And the other part of that is if we don't do it with the county, we do it with, private partnership. Well, now we generate tax dollars. Right now, those buildings and those areas are just sitting there empty. So we're not generating anything at all for the citizens in this county, and they're paying they're basically paying for everything for empty buildings that we're just not going out. We have to go sell our way. And I say this in this county is, you can sell your way to prosperity or you can save your way to prosperity. And my job as county executive would be to get in a car or get on a plane and not sit down in 44 Calvert and hope somebody comes to me, and go find those people and go find those corporations that want to come to Anne Arundel County because of the way of life and what we're doing to make it better. And when we do that and we bring those people in, generally, hopefully they're higher paying jobs, which then makes housing affordable, which then makes, creates tax rate, because now we have buildings that are occupied instead of sitting empty. And it is a great domino effect that works for the positive. And I have to go do that. If we're going to move forward in Anne Arundel County, you've got to go sell the benefits of this county. And there's so many benefits. It's a beautiful county. People don't realize that this county has the second most water coastline, of any county in the United States. Only Nassau County, New York City, has more coastline. Well, that's great recreational opportunities and things for families. And then you look at Annapolis. I don't know if folks have, ever been to Newport, Rhode Island, but you go to Newport, Rhode Island, it's not much different than Annapolis. And that place is beautiful. And on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, that place is jammed with tourists, and not only from New York City, from all over the East Coast. Well, that brings tax dollars, brings revenue. You get the head and bed tax from hotels and motels. If we do that and we get folks coming here and realizing, the beautiful area, the beautiful county, the beautiful things we got, the potential is unlimited. But you don't get that by hoping, wishing, and sitting in a chair. You've got to get out and you've got to go make it work. And that's, once again, what I do for a living now. I don't win by sitting in this chair in my office. I win by getting up every morning and leaving at 6 o'clock and going out and finding those customers and what we can do. I'll take that same mentality, that same customer service, only to the corporations and companies that are in this United States that are looking to move. And there's always corporations and companies looking to move. And you've just got to be the one standing in front of them with the great pitch to saying, hey, you want to come live in a great county, a safe county, a beautiful county, and a great recreational county? Anne Arundel is the answer. And plus, you can even sell the area. And when I say that, look, it's 30 minutes to DC. I mean, everybody that comes in that I have from corporate people come in and I take them to DC, man, they're amazed, right, that we live this close and what we have. And, the Philadelphia, New York, within 3 and 4 hours. That's so many people in this country, and coming from Texas, I can tell you that, are amazed by what we have up here, and we take it for granted when, it's a beautiful area, and it's just so many great opportunities and so many great things. And, the Naval Academy is one of a kind too. And that's something special some days I think we forget about. So when you talk about, economy and all that good stuff, it's up to me to make it happen, and I've got to make it happen. It's not just going to appear, for lack of a better word.
What do you feel are the greatest challenges that the county is facing right now?
Well, infrastructure, because I think traffic is huge. I think the people in the Crofton Wall Chapel area are about the pardon the cliche, but pull their hair out because, just to try to get some of the traffic flow. I laugh a little bit because you kind of scratch your head of how they thought this was a good idea to make the road go this way. I always make a joke to my friends coming from Texas. I call it Aggie engineering, but because it's just kind of strange. Like this makes no sense. So we've got to find a way, and you've got the apartments and homes and all that on one side of 3, and just to get over to the wall chapel that's been developed. First off, if you're going to walk, you're taking your life in your hands walking. Okay, that's scary. We got to figure out some way to fix that. The second part, even sometimes a simple drive could be 15 minutes because of travel direction and turns and all that good stuff. So infrastructure is a huge challenge. That's going to be a huge challenge. Everything from, I know that there's a wastewater plant issue right now. We have to look at that. We've waited so long. It kind of upsets me a little bit because instead of looking ahead and planning, we kind of wait till we get to the problem and go, okay, what do we do now? And where are we going to get the money from? Well, when that happens, all right, and you haven't planned, the only way you can get money is start raising taxes, start raising fees, because there's no way to bring that income in because you haven't planned for it. And we've got to do that, or we're never going to change the infrastructure and traffic. We always, you always talk about economic development, but you also talk about the environment. All that goes hand in hand. This county's been around a long time. I mean, the sheriff department's been here since like 1644, 1634, right? So it's been around a long time. All right. So we have structures that are old and new. And when you talk about environmental standards and EPA standards and building standards, we've got the old and the new. The older buildings, I guarantee you, probably still got asbestos in them. There's probably still tile in them. There's probably still some lead pipes out there. I kid you not. And then we've got new construction, which is up to today's standards. So when we go rehabbing and all that, we have to be conscious of the fact that, it's those things are out there and we've got to address it. We've got some of the older buildings downtown in Annapolis are great. We need to keep those, right? Those are special. I mean, when you have the only quote unquote working state house left in this country, okay, that's a jewel that, once again, we have to make sure we preserve. Okay. So we have to mix the old and the new, but we have to be smart. We can't wait till we get to the problem to solve the problem. You can look at so many things in this county and say, okay, this is going to be a problem. What are we going to do now? Because in 2 years, it's going to be a problem. Well, if we wait to 2 years, then guess what? It is a problem. And I see that time and time again, and just how we operate sometimes is, till our backs are against the wall, then we got to make a decision. And that is so frustrating because that decision every single time becomes costlier than if you would have planned. So hopefully I answered your question, Susan, but yeah, I mean, there's so much of that. And really it's, like a broken record here. It starts with infrastructure. It's just, we have got to do a better job. And I'm telling you that the light at the end of the tunnel is a freight train when it comes to this Bay Bridge project, because that's going to be huge in the next 4 years, because something's got to happen. We all know that, we can't stick our head in the sand and pretend that that's not going to happen, because it is. And we're going to have to be ahead of that. And then with that, look at 50, look at 97, get with the state. I'm a firm believer we need to come up and maybe talk to them about building some off ramps and all that, because if people could get off, I think we would alleviate the problem on 3 and 2 Ritchie Highway. And then we need to look at, like I said, the development up north in Glen Burnie and then you look at, let's talk about the Odenton area and the Gambrills area and all that. NSA, Fort Meade, they're not going to get smaller. Everybody can think that, but those are bases and facilities that will continue to employ more people, will continue to grow their employment staff and continue to add folks, because basically, that's a huge hub for our United States military and our United States security with NSA. And I don't see that going backwards, not at all. So, the west side of the county is important too, because pretty soon we're going to have a problem over there. I don't know how many folks have traveled on 32 at 7 o'clock in the morning, but it starts backing up at 170. and it's bumper to bumper till you just get past NSA. Well, once again, that's something we need to sit and talk to state highway about, because that's 32 is a state highway. And I'm sure there's plenty of person that gets frustrated sitting in that traffic Monday through Friday morning. And that's a federal government project too, because, the base is on both sides of that road. And that's something, once again, that, you go to the Pentagon and have that conversation saying, look, you guys got to work with us here, to improve, access, because, God forbid something happens there one day, and it's going to be a bottleneck getting out of there for anybody.
So, we hear a lot of talk about smart growth, and obviously we've talked a little bit about your philosophy here, but I'm struck that it's sometimes a term that means different things to different people. So in some contexts, when people talk about smart growth, they're talking about being close to public transit or higher density in particular areas. You've kind of outlined some ideas about how you would like to see development, but what's your philosophy or what's your approach to smart growth?
Yeah, smart growth is basically the person you're talking to's answer. I get you. And as the guy leading the county, which I plan on being that guy, smart growth
Right.
is making sure we have the infrastructure to support the growth, right? You can't build the subdivision and go, oh golly, I guess we got to increase the road by another lane, because all that does is make it miserable. Okay. So we have to look at where we're going to grow and how we're going to grow. And smart growth is just not about building buildings. And I think it's lost way too much. Smart growth starts, in my opinion, starts with the school board. Okay. Because we have to educate our kids. We have to get, and I'm a firm believer, I don't want kids riding a bus for an hour, 45 minutes. I can tell you, coming from rural Nacogdoches, my youngest daughter, rode the bus for an hour, but that was only because it was rural, not because of anything else, right? And we have to work with the school board, because they have to be able to handle the kids and get our kids education. I know there was a big topic within the last year about redistricting because of that, right? And we start with that. We start with the school board. We make sure that our schools can handle the children, and we handle the classroom size for those children. And then we develop from there and work from there. And that's how smart growth is, to me, is so simple. You start with the school board and you just work out from there. That's the center of what we're going to do, because at the end of any given day, I don't care what it is, we care about our kids. We want our kids to go to school. We want our kids to come home safe. Okay. And want them to get a good education. And if we skip that in growth, then all we're doing is a disservice, because just like what happened had to happen. We had to redistrict because we didn't start with the school board. We went out there, did all the stuff, and then the school board said, guess what? Here it is, fix it. Okay. And then everybody got mad. Okay. Or it worked for something, didn't work for some. You just scratch your head going, you guys should have seen this coming. Why didn't we talk to the school board first and make sure that we had enough teachers, we had enough classroom, the classroom size was right, we had enough, facilities to handle the kids. All right. And let those kids, because extracurricular activities, after school activities, all that's important. Okay. To a child growing up. I don't care what anybody says. I'll take anybody to task on that. That is so important in today's world for our kids to be able to have those after school activities, to have the right size classroom, the teachers to be able to teach in the classroom, to be able to handle it, to be able to get to the school and have a school that has facilities that are usable. I mean, so many times the schools get built up, and next thing you know, we're trying to fix the schools in the summertime, and the teachers are tough. And I can tell you, my wife was a retired school teacher here, and I could tell you the stories of the frustration of the kids and getting the kids to school. I mean, there was a couple kids that came by taxi cab to get to her school because she was in the regional program, and I scratched my head. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? But anyway, smart growth goes back to the schools, starting with the school board, looking where we're at, and then from there, that's kind of the hub, and building out from that, working with the developers, making sure the developers are tuned in, because they're going to put the roads in, they're going to put the facilities in. We got to make sure we can handle it. Like I said, we've got a wastewater issue in Northeast County right now because of development. Okay, we gotta be smart, and smart growth, and start there and build out, instead of just kind of going, here we go. And then all of a sudden we're scratching our heads. The developers got to be on board. They've got to make, the developers want to make money, build homes, build a life for their families. That's great stuff. That's all part of growth. It's all part of economics. Okay. I want them involved. All right. I think there's crazy regulations that we need to get rid of and work and have a coalition between the developers and planning and zoning and those folks and Department of Public Works and all that and permits, that we all get together, and what makes sense, makes sense to have for policy, procedures, rules, whatever you want to call it. And the ones that are just ridiculous, hey, let's toss them out. And that's part of smart growth. We've lost that. We've put so much restrictions on the developers and the home improvement folks that it scratch your head. And what happens is it starts becoming holes in smart growth, and it doesn't become smart growth anymore. It just becomes frustrated growth. And we can't have that. We just can't have that. So that's how I look at smart growth.
Great. Susan?
You spoke about the moratorium in North County with the sewer system. It would be interesting for those of us who aren't in North County to know, how our area is doing. Do you know, have they given any information about whether there's moratoriums coming in other areas?
We're getting close in that Sawmill Creek area right now. Okay. In the wastewater. And, there's a perfect example. You asked me about the current county executive, right? He knew the number of gallons we could be sending in the city of Baltimore, and he was pretty much asleep at the wheel. And Baltimore sent him a thing saying, dude, you've exceeded that. And he said, well, I didn't know that was the number. I just kind of understood that was the median, when they're like, no, tough luck. Okay. And all of a sudden there's a moratorium. Okay. Back to my statement a minute ago where I said, all of a sudden we realized there's a problem and we didn't plan and we weren't smart, and you're just asleep at the wheel. And I hope we don't get to that in Sawmill Creek, but as we work through this, we've got to go back and look at that and make sure we aren't asleep at the wheel.
So tell us a little bit about your campaign and how people can get in touch with you.
So it's Crawford, CRAWFORD, the number 4, exec, EXEC.com is the website. I've got a great group of people in my committee. They want to see good things for this county. I will tell you that I couldn't have a better group. I mean, I couldn't be so proud of these people volunteering and stepping up. We see every week the momentum picking up, people understanding what I'm saying, seeing where I'm at, seeing the kind of person I am, realizing that I care. I'm like everybody else. I'm not, and I will go back to the current exec. I'm not aloof. I live in a neighborhood just like everybody else. I got my flag in my front yard, and at 2:00 in the morning, if you call for help, I get up and go help. And that won't change. I can tell you the campaign, I guess, and I kind of pat myself on the back for this, is during the snowstorm, I had a subdivision that they got my cell number. Guy called me and said, hey, man, we haven't been plowed. Can you help? Because I know you're with the fire department. Can you help? I said, sure. So I called DPW, and all of a sudden, we kind of helped the community. I think that's a great thing. And people realize, and that's what I'm about, is doing the right thing for the people in this community, doing the right thing for the people in this county, because as we do that and realize we're accessible, I see people every day saying, man, I support you. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I got your back. Your message makes sense. It's common sense message. It's running the county like a business, which it should be, and realizing, like I said, who's your customer and what your business is. And you have to have a business plan. And if you put a budget together, it's because you put a budget together to be successful and grow. I don't know any corporation that puts a budget together to lose money, okay, or just be so. And that's where I feel that I'm strong, is that's what I do every year. Is I have to put my budget together, and I have to come up with, find a way to get a 10% increase. And I can tell you, and you guys are in business, 10% increase on $90 million is tough, but you have to do that. Well, that's what you have to do when we do this, is you have to, we have to look at every year finding that way to increase and finding those dollars to be there. And our campaign is, people are realizing that, and I think the message is getting out. The message is resonating. And I'm a pretty simple guy, to be honest with you. There's not a lot to figure out who I am, and that's where it's at, and that's what we want to do. So it's crawford4exec.com. You call, I'll show up. I don't care. Everybody deserves. I don't care if you're the biggest, community organization or your community organization of 2 people. You still deserve the same respect, and you still deserve to be heard, listened to, and respected. And I think in today's world, and sometimes in today's climate, people don't feel like they're getting any respect, and that's a shame, because everybody deserves that.
Do you have any events coming up for your campaign, or are you going to be at any community events coming up that folks can come out and meet you?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be at some community events next Saturday, May 2nd. I'm actually going out of town tomorrow for work, so I don't get back till Tuesday, so I kind of had to watch when I'm scheduled. But then I'm going to a couple of events on the 2nd. I'm going to trying to think of it. It's basically a derby event on Saturday evening, the 2nd. I've always been good about going to those fundraisers. I think those therapeutic riding are just outstanding things for what they do for our servicemen and our disabled citizens in this county, and how they've got started in the fundraising. I'm huge in that. I know on the 6th, I'm going to an event for Amanda. We're trying to put a couple together for us in May now when I'm back. It's May, and I don't want to do anything over Mother's Day weekend. I think that we still need to respect that. I'm a firm believer in that. And then, of course, the following weekend, I started something here that we're nationally recognized at our fire company. We have a heavy extrication school that I brought with me when I came from Texas. And now we've got firefighters from Connecticut last year. We had them all up to Connecticut coming down here and staying. And that shows off the great Anne Arundel County and the great Anne Arundel County Fire Department. I continue with that, and that's always the 3rd weekend in May. So May's a little tough, but we're going to have stuff during the week. We're looking to put something together down at Homestead Gardens on the south side of the county, working with a couple folks to put something up here in the Severna Park area. So if you go to my website, you should see the events popping up, and just keep looking, because we've got stuff where we're out. And like I said, and I mean this sincerely, if you want to stop by my house and knock on the door, I'll be happy to walk out or sit on the porch and talk to you. And if you see me out in the public, pull me aside. I mean, I am literally every day in a restaurant in our county, I kid you not, or I'm out and about, and it's not too hard to kind of see who I am, and just pull me aside and say, "Hey, Dave, you got a second?" And believe me, for anybody, and especially the citizens of this county, I have more than a second. I got plenty of time to hear, because we need to hear their voice. They deserve to have their voice heard, and realize that you're going to have a guy sitting in that chair only for maybe an hour every morning on Calvert Street, and then out and about getting things done. So that's the kind of person I am.
So it sounds like you're advocating doing reverse door knocking. Instead of you're going out, you get people come by your house and knock on your door, which.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, I think, I kind of hope that everybody, this is a county for all. And I truly mean this, that regardless of who you are, you have a voice. And like I said, you're right. It's kind of a reverse door knocking. And sometimes I think that gives everybody an opportunity, instead of just kind of pigeonholing myself and only knocking on a few doors. So, and it's tough in a county this big. I mean, you get all kinds of numbers of how big the county is now. So there's no way I can get out and touch everybody, but they can sure come find me, or we can somehow hook up somewhere.
Sounds great. And so, Dave, thank you for joining us. And Susan, thank you for joining us as well. And now we're going to hear a little bit about Masoni's.
Yeah, have you guys ever been to Masoni's in Perry Hall, Baltimore? Best Italian food in the state of Maryland. Family owned by the Masoni family for years. And if you mention the Bob and Kendall podcast, you do get a discount on your check of 10%. So, yeah, we should all go down to Masoni's. Good night, everyone.
Let's go down to Masoni's, where Italian cuisine shines. Let's go down to Masoni's, we'll have a good old time. Homemade pasta at Masoni's, sauces fresh and fine. Good friends gather at Masoni's, join us